At my sister's baby shower, Mom laughed and said, "You'll never give me grandkids anyway." My brother smirked. "He's too selfish to ever be a dad." I smiled, stood up, and quietly walked out. The next morning, their family group chat exploded. "The mortgage is due. Where's your share? Don't be petty. You owe this family." I calmly replied, "Ask the future father of the year. I'm too selfish to help." Then I muted the chat and watched the chaos burn without me. You know that gut-wrenching moment? The one where the people who claimed to love you most were actually planning to kick you right out of your own life, maybe even onto the streets? Yeah, that's when I finally understood my family wasn't just dysfunctional. They were actively plotting against me. My name's Sam. I'm 32. And if I had to describe my family in one single word, it would be performative. From the outside, we probably looked like one of those picture-perfect suburban dreams you see on Facebook Christmas cards. Matching sweaters, synchronized smiles, all those overused captions about gratitude and family first. But peel back even one thin layer, and the truth was stark. It was all one big, exhausting show. My mom, especially, lived for appearances. Everything was about how things looked, never how they actually were. Then there was Derek, my older brother, the undisputed golden boy. Married at 28, first house at 30, 2 kids by 33. He'd post pictures of his seemingly perfect family so often, I genuinely wondered if he remembered how to just be present in real life. And my younger sister, Leia, she was the princess. Spoiled, rotten, cuddled, and now at 26, pregnant with her first child. She was the baby, and Mom never, ever let her forget it. And me? I was the middle child. The forgotten one. The one who eventually just stopped showing up for things unless I absolutely had to. No kids, not married, no plans to settle down anytime soon. Apparently, that made me selfish. I work in IT remotely, have a decent income, nothing flashy. I've got my own place, and I tend to keep to myself. I learned a long time ago that trying to get emotional support from my family was like trying to squeeze water from a stone. I used to think that maybe if I succeeded enough, they'd start to see me. But nope. My achievements weren't interesting. I wasn't interesting. Not unless I could be used for something. A ride. A last-minute babysitter. Or, more often lately, a contributor to the family fund. That was Mom's new favorite thing, pulling resources from all 3 kids to cover shared expenses, which somehow always meant bailing out Derek and Leia. Mom called it being a team. I called it what it was, emotional blackmail, wrapped tightly in guilt and suffocating expectations. The baby shower for Leia was a perfect, infuriating example of everything I'd come to resent. It was held in Mom and Dad's backyard, color-coordinated, and absolutely dripping with those over-the-top Pinterest vibes. Balloon arches, custom cookies with the baby's name, even a professional photographer capturing every perfect moment. Of course, it wasn't Leia or her husband footing the bill. Dad, in a rare moment of honesty, had let slip that Derek had helped out financially, and I knew from painful past experience that meant I was next on the list. But no one had asked me directly yet, so I kept quiet. I showed up on time, gift in hand, dressed nicely but not too nicely. I figured I'd keep a low profile, say the right things, and make an early escape. But of course, Mom had to put on a show. "Oh wow," she chirped loudly when I walked in, just as a few of Leia's friends turned to look. "Sam actually made it. I thought you'd be too busy with one of your solo adventures." I forced a smile. "Nice to see you too, Mom." She waved me off with that fake laugh she reserves for company. "You know, I'm just teasing." Then came Derek, holding a beer like he owned the place. "Still single, huh?" he said as he hugged me one-armed. "You should try dating a human being instead of your laptop again." My smile tightened. "Still not funny, Derek." He grinned. "Come on, loosen up. You're so serious all the time." I wanted to scream. Maybe because every time I show up, you treat me like a punchline. But I bit my tongue. I always do. The first real slap in the face came during one of those weird baby shower games. You know, the kind where everyone's supposed to guess baby stats and give parenting advice. Mom stood up, handing out little slips of paper with prompts. Mine said, What's one thing you're excited to teach the baby? I hadn't even picked up a pen before Mom clapped her hands and said, "Oh, maybe Sam can teach her how to ghost people. He's a pro at that." Laughter erupted. Too much of it, even from Leia. Even from people who barely knew me. I slowly set the paper down. "I'll pass," I said quietly. Leia leaned in with a smirk. Come on. Don't be sensitive. It's just a joke." "Yeah," Derek added. "Don't be that guy." That was it. I stood up, excused myself, saying I needed some air. I ended up walking around the block twice, just trying to breathe. When I came back, I stayed on the edges, avoiding conversation. I smiled for the photographer when she came around. I even helped carry out the cake, because that's what I do. I show up, take the hits, and keep the peace. But something cracked that day. Something deep inside me. The final straw came after the gifts. Leia was opening a huge box from Derek, a fancy baby monitor system with built-in night vision and 2 cameras. Everyone oohed and awed. Then she got to mine, a simple but well-made baby wrap from a brand I knew was ethically produced and comfortable, something practical. She pulled it out, blinked, and looked at the tag. "Oh, this is nice," she said, and immediately set it aside. Someone made a joke about how Aunt Leia deserves the best. And Mom chimed in again. "Well, what do you expect? Sam doesn't really get the whole family thing." That stung, but not as much as what came next. Mom laughed, holding her phone like she was about to film. "I mean, let's be honest. You'll never give me grandkids anyway, right?" Derek, sipping his beer, didn't even look up. He's too selfish to be a dad. There it was. The line. The cut they'd been dying to make all day. A sudden, heavy silence fell over the table, but no one said a word in my defense. Not even Dad. Not a single one. I stood up, placed my plate down, and simply nodded. Got it. And I left. No yelling, no drama. Just a clean walk to the door and back to my car. No one followed. No one called. And for the first time in that strange, silent drive home, I didn't feel guilty. What I did feel was tired. Not the kind of tired a nap fixes, but the kind that settles into your bones after years of trying to earn love from people who only ever notice your absence when they need something from you. I went home, took a long shower, ordered food, and didn't respond to the one message Leia sent. A blurry picture of her gift table with the caption, "Thanks for coming." The next morning, everything started to unravel. I woke up to 47 unread messages in the family group chat. I almost laughed. Derek, mortgage is due. Where's your share? Mom, Sam, we need to talk. You can't just disappear and refuse to contribute. Leia, seriously, just because you didn't like a joke. Derek again, don't be petty. You owe this family. That word again, family. Oh. I typed one reply, ask the future father of the year. I'm too selfish to help. Then I muted the chat. What happened next? Well, that's when things really started to burn. I didn't check the group chat for 3 days after muting it. Honestly, I didn't care to. I figured they'd blow off steam, gossip behind my back in the sibling side chats I was never included in, and move on. That's how it always went. But when my cousin Tara texted me privately with, "Hey, are you okay? Your mom's been saying some stuff," I opened the chat, mostly out of curiosity. And yeah, it was worse than I thought. Mom had gone full martyr mode. Message after message about sacrifices and how ungrateful some people are, sprinkled with vague quotes like, "A family is only as strong as its weakest link, and some people only show up when it benefits them." I wasn't mentioned by name, but the implication was as subtle as a brick. Leia added fuel with some passive-aggressive remark about how some people can't handle not being the center of attention. And Derek, of course, had to throw in, "You wouldn't be living so comfortably if it weren't for everything Mom and Dad did for you growing up." Comfortably. My apartment was 900 square feet above a loud coffee shop with a broken heater and one working window. Meanwhile, Derek lived in a 5-bedroom house his in-laws helped him finance, and Leia was still living rent-free in Mom and Dad's basement while her husband found himself. But sure, I was the one living in luxury. Still, I stayed quiet. I thought that maybe if I ignored it, the drama would fade. But it didn't. Instead, Mom started doing this thing where she'd lure me into one-on-one texts with guilt-laced reminders. Leia's baby shower photographer ended up being way over budget. We all agreed to chip in, remember? I hadn't agreed to anything. I'd never even been asked, but the phrasing made it seem like I'd missed a vote I was expected to attend. Then came the utilities. Derek's water heater broke again. I told him you'd help this time since he covered last Christmas dinner. He hadn't. I had. I'd Venmo'd $300 that night to make things easier. Apparently, that had been quietly erased from the family memory. Each message was like a tiny thread pulling at a very old wound. And the worst part? I realized they genuinely didn't see it. They didn't think they were mistreating me. In their minds, I was just being cold, difficult, ungrateful, because the moment I stopped saying yes to everything, I became the problem. Then came the real kicker. A week after the shower, I got a call from Dad. That in itself was unusual. He rarely called. He's the quiet type, more bark than bite, but not exactly emotionally present. Hey, son, he started in that stiff tone he always used when he was about to say something he didn't believe in. Your mom says you've been a little off lately. I'm fine, I said, already dreading where this was going. She's just worried, that's all. Says you're pulling away from the family. I sighed. Dad, did you hear what they said at the shower? There was a pause. Well, you know your mother. She jokes around. And Derek. Another pause. Longer this time. He's just under a lot of stress. 2 kids, mortgage, long hours. And that gives him permission to insult me? Don't be so sensitive, Sam. I closed my eyes. There it was. The golden phrase. Don't be so sensitive. A lifetime of being brushed aside, minimized, rewritten under that single label. I'm not sensitive, I said slowly. I'm just tired. Dad didn't respond. Just exhaled and changed the subject. Anyway, your mom's planning a family dinner. Everyone's coming. She wants you there. Why? So we can all talk this out. Clear the air. I already knew what that meant. Sit down, take the blame, and make peace. I'll think about it, I lied. I didn't go. That dinner came and went. And when I didn't show, the fallout was instant. Mom sent a long message, I can't believe you didn't come. Your sister cried. Derek made a toast, hoping you'd walk in. It was humiliating for us all. No mention of what I might be feeling, just how it made them look. Leia followed up with, this is supposed to be a happy time for me. Why are you making it about you? That was the moment something hardened in me. They didn't just expect me to support them. They expected me to erase myself while doing it. And, suddenly, the guilt that used to keep me tethered, the guilt that kept me showing up to things I wasn't welcome at, paying for things I never agreed to, laughing off comments that chipped away at my dignity, it started to lose its grip. I stopped replying. Not just to the group chat, but to everything. Calls, texts, emails. I let them stew. I focused on work, on friends, on people who didn't treat me like a resource to be drained. For a while, it was quiet. Too quiet. Then, slowly, they escalated. Mom started messaging me at odd hours. I had a nightmare that you cut us off. Please don't do that. Followed by, your silence is hurting us all. Then Derek started dropping links in the chat to GoFundMe pages for emergency repairs on his house, tagging me. Every little bit helps, bro. As if we'd spoken recently. As if we were close. Leia sent ultrasound photos. No message, just the images. A subtle reminder that this was the moment I was supposed to step up and become Uncle Sam. Cute. Manipulative. Then Mom tried a different tactic. We're short on rent this month. I know you said you didn't want to be involved, but this is serious. Wait, rent? That confused me. I thought they owned their home. They'd always said so. But I didn't ask. I didn't want to give her a chance to spin another web of half-truths. But something about it nagged at me, because if they were short on rent, something bigger was going on. Something they weren't telling me. And then one night, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of a Craigslist ad. Room for rent, basement unit, private entrance, available immediately. The address? Mom and Dad's house. That's when the puzzle started to come together. I stared at the ad, rereading it 3-4 times. Then I looked at the date it was posted, 2 days before the baby shower. So, while they were mocking me for being selfish, for not giving them grandkids, for not being the golden child, They were quietly planning to rent out part of their house, which meant Leia and her husband had to move, which meant they were planning to ask me for a place to stay. The idea hit me like a gut punch. The sickening realization that they didn't just expect money from me. They expected space. A place to land, rent-free, no doubt. And just like that, everything they'd said at the baby shower shifted into place. It hadn't just been cruelty. It had been justification. They were laying the groundwork, rewriting the story in real time so that when they came knocking, when they asked for something outrageous, it wouldn't seem like manipulation. It would seem like charity. I shut off my phone. I had a lot to think about. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there staring at the ceiling. That Craigslist ad burned into my mind like a warning shot I hadn't seen coming. They hadn't just disrespected me. They were preparing to use me again, but this time it wasn't for a few $100 or a quick favor. This time it would be my home. I spent the next few days hyper-aware, watching, waiting. I didn't say anything to them. Not about the ad, not about the texts, not about the subtle, guilt-laced photos and links. I just observed. And what I saw was a family circling like vultures around a plan. Only I wasn't supposed to know I was the carcass. Then, a week after the baby shower, the dam broke. I came home from running errands, arms full of groceries, and saw something strange. A white SUV parked in my designated spot in front of my building. I didn't recognize it at first, until I saw the bumper sticker, "Proud Dog Mom," in glittery cursive. That was Leia's car. And when I walked into my building, up the stairs to my floor, heart pounding with confusion and a deepening dread, I found Derek standing at my apartment door holding a baby car seat. Empty, thankfully. "What are you doing here?" I asked, setting the bags down. He smiled like this was all perfectly normal. "Hey, bro, figured we'd beat traffic. Mom said you were expecting us today." The floor dropped from under me. "Expecting you?" "Yeah, to crash for a while, just until things stabilize at home." I blinked. "What do you mean crash? What's happening at home?" He shrugged like it was no big deal. "The basement reno didn't work out. Some zoning issue. They're turning it into a rental for real now. Parents are stressing. Mom said you had the space." What? Leia's voice rang out from behind him. "We brought our own air mattress and diapers, so you won't have to buy anything." I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. I just stared as my brother and pregnant sister stood at my doorstep with a car full of belongings, expecting to move in because my mother had told them it was fine. They'd brought nothing official. No lease, no agreement, not even the courtesy of a conversation with me beforehand. Just assumptions. Entitlement wrapped in a smile and a diaper bag. "You were going to move into my home without even asking me?" I finally said, my voice tight. Derek looked genuinely confused. "Mom said it was already handled, that you were happy to help. And you didn't think to confirm that with me?" He actually laughed. "Come on, Sam. Don't be dramatic. You live alone. You've got a second bedroom. It's just for a couple months." A couple months. I looked over his shoulder and saw Leia dragging a suitcase up the stairs. Her husband, silent, awkward, trailed behind her, carrying 2 trash bags full of clothes. "You're already moving in," I said, the realization dawning. Derek looked down, sheepish now. Yeah. Sorry. I know it's sudden, but with the baby coming, we need somewhere stable. Stable. And I was the stable one, right? The boring one. The one without a family. The one who worked remote, had space, and didn't need it. I looked at the bags, the car seat, the way they were already wedging the door open with a box of baby formula, and I snapped. "You're not staying here," I said. Leia froze. "What?" "You heard me. No one told me about this. You showed up like squatters, and you're not staying here." Her face twisted. "You're kicking out your pregnant sister?" Derek stepped forward. "Sam, be reasonable. This is family." "Exactly," I said. "Family doesn't do this." I bent down, grabbed my grocery bags, and walked into the apartment, shutting the door behind me before they could even respond. They knocked. They texted. They called. I ignored every one of them. Eventually, they left. But it didn't end there, because within an hour, Mom called me screaming. "How dare you turn them away like that?" she shrieked. Do you have any idea what they're going through? I do now, I said calmly. After they showed up unannounced with half their belongings. I told them you were fine with it. You never asked me, Mom. You decided, like always. It's your duty as their brother. It's not my duty to clean up your financial mess. That silenced her for about half a second, and then the flood came. Accusations, guilt-tripping, what happened to you, and you used to care. And maybe if you had a family of your own, you'd understand. That one cut deep, and she knew it would. That was the point. I'm done, I said finally. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your safety net. You made this mess. You clean it up. Click. I sat in the silence afterward, my pulse racing. For the first time in my life, I hadn't just set a boundary. I'd enforced it. But I knew it wouldn't end there, because people like my mom, they don't respect boundaries. They test them. And sure enough, she found a new way to do just that. 2 days later, I got a notice from my landlord. A formal complaint had been filed against me for unauthorized subletting activity. Apparently, someone had called and claimed I was running a rental operation out of my apartment. And I knew exactly who it was. When I read that notice, my stomach twisted into knots. It was printed neatly on company letterhead, stapled to my door like a scarlet letter. Notice: allegation of unauthorized subletting. A warning, not an eviction yet, but the implication was clear. Someone had called my complex and told them I was illegally renting out rooms. I wasn't. But that didn't matter. In the eyes of property management, even the suggestion of policy violations was enough to paint a red target on my back. I had lived there for 4 years without a single issue. Paid rent early, filed maintenance tickets politely, never made noise, never threw parties. And now, suddenly, I was under investigation. I took the letter inside and stared at it for 20 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't text my mom or Derek or Leia, though my fingers hovered over their names. I just sat in my kitchen, the soft hum of the fridge the only sound, and felt crushed under the weight of it all. They'd gone from guilt-tripping to sabotage. And I couldn't even prove it. That's what made it worse. There was no way to trace who made the call. No recording, no name, just an anonymous tip. But come on, who else would do it? Who else would have any reason to hurt me like this? In a way that looked so casual, so clean, yet had the power to ruin everything. It was the kind of move Mom specialized in. Something she could deny if I confronted her, while still holding the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under my skin. That night, I barely slept. I couldn't stop imagining what would happen if I lost my apartment. My lease was month to month. They didn't need much of a reason to end it. What if I had to scramble to find somewhere else? What if I had to move cities just to get away from the cloud they'd cast over me? I opened my laptop, mind racing, and began looking up tenant laws. I read forums, Reddit threads, anything to reassure myself that I had rights, that I wouldn't lose my home over a lie. But the more I read, the more uncertain it all felt. Landlords don't need a trial. They just need an excuse. And a lie repeated enough can become very persuasive. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I called in sick. I couldn't focus, couldn't work. I needed to be still. I needed to breathe. I made coffee, sat on the couch, and finally let myself feel everything. The betrayal, the shame, the old wounds of growing up in a family where love came with conditions and where boundaries were seen as insults. I thought about all the birthdays I'd spent feeling like a background character. All the times I'd been the designated driver of the family, not just in cars, but in life. The one who didn't mess up. The one who could always take a hit. The reliable one. The safe one. I thought about the moment at the baby shower. That look on Derek's face when he called me selfish. How easily it rolled off his tongue, like it was fact. Like it was something they'd all discussed behind closed doors and silently agreed upon. And then I thought about the real reason they'd turned on me. Because I'd stopped being useful. That was the crime. I had pulled away. Not out of spite. Not out of arrogance. But out of self-preservation. And to them, that meant war. I needed to get away. Not just emotionally, but physically. So, I started looking. Not for a new apartment yet, but for options. Remote work hubs. Rentals in other cities. I even entertained the idea of moving states entirely. Maybe I could sublet somewhere warm, live near the coast for a bit, start over. The idea felt radical, but it also felt like oxygen in a room that had been slowly choking me for years. But I knew better than to move on impulse. That's what they'd expect. A flailing response, a meltdown, something to reinforce the story they told themselves, that I was the unstable one, the cold one, the failure. So I waited. I gathered documents. I took photos of my apartment, my belongings, my lease agreement. I printed bank statements, proving no payments had come in. I called the landlord, calm and measured, and asked for a meeting to clear things up. She was skeptical at first, said she'd heard things. But when I laid everything out, she nodded slowly. No one's ever filed a noise complaint against you, she admitted. No traffic in and out. Frankly, this doesn't line up. I offered to let her inspect the place. No hidden guests, no extra beds. She waved it off. You seem honest, she said. I just had to follow up. And just like that, the fire was contained. For now. But something in me had shifted, because the fact that they tried and almost succeeded made something inside me snap. Not in a way that made me want revenge. Not yet. But in a way that made me detach. I was done giving them power over me. That night, I opened my storage closet, pulled out the old moving boxes I had saved, and started folding them together. Not because I was packing yet, but because I needed the reminder, I can leave. I have choices. I am not trapped. The next morning, I called a therapist. Her first available appointment was in 2 weeks. I booked it, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the tiniest spark of control come back to me. Not anger, not rage, just direction. The beginning of a plan. Because if they wanted to treat me like a villain in their story, fine. I'd be the kind that learns how to write his own ending. It's strange how quickly things start to shift once you stop waiting for permission to live your own life. The weeks after the fake complaint were quiet, at least on the surface. My family must have realized I wasn't backing down because the messages slowed. No more desperate texts. No more calls from blocked numbers. Even the group chat fell silent. It felt like standing in the eye of a storm. Too calm. Too still. But I welcomed the quiet. For once, I had space to think, to breathe, and most importantly, to build. The appointment with the therapist came faster than expected. Her name was Lena, early 40s, calm voice, no-nonsense demeanor. I liked her immediately. In that first session, I didn't even talk about the baby shower. I started further back. The childhood stuff, the being overlooked, the way my wins were ignored and my setbacks used as weapons, the guilt that followed every boundary I tried to set. Lena listened, took notes, and then said something simple that cracked open something inside me. Your family doesn't need you to be healthy. They need you to be available. There's a difference. I sat with that for a long time. Over the next few sessions, we talked about enmeshment, about emotional roles in dysfunctional families, about the guilt that gets passed down like inheritance. Lena gave me language for things I'd always felt but could never articulate. And slowly, I began to untangle myself from the story my family had written about me. The story where I was selfish, cold, hard to love. I wasn't. I was just done bleeding for people who sharpened their knives on my back. At work, things picked up too. Maybe it was the therapy. Maybe it was the piece of not checking my phone every 5 minutes for a guilt trip. But I started performing better. Clearer mind, sharper focus. My manager noticed. Sam, your last 2 projects were outstanding, she said during our weekly sync. You've got a real knack for streamlining processes. Have you ever considered a lead role? I hadn't. I said yes. The promotion came with a raise. Not a massive one, but enough to change things. More autonomy, more respect. I was no longer just the quiet guy who kept the system running. I was leading. Around the same time, an old college friend, Marcus, reached out. We hadn't spoken in years, but he'd seen my profile on LinkedIn and was putting together a small team for a startup contract. I need someone I trust, he said. And you always got things done. I took the freelance gig on weekends. The extra income helped me build a cushion. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was stacking savings, leverage, options. And it showed. I upgraded some furniture in my apartment. Not flashy, just mine. A new desk, a better mattress, real artwork on the walls, things that made the space feel like me, not just a stopgap between obligations. I also started doing things I'd put off for years. I booked a solo trip. Lisbon. 3 weeks. Remote work from cafes, evenings by the coast, 0 calls from family. I didn't tell anyone but my manager and therapist. The morning I flew out, I turned off my phone and stepped onto the plane with a duffel bag and a book I'd been meaning to read for 6 years. That trip changed something, because for the first time, I felt what it meant to be unreachable. Not out of spite, not out of fear, but out of choice. No one could guilt me into anything. No one could twist my day into theirs. I walked ancient streets, drank espresso under orange trees, and felt more like myself than I ever had back home. When I came back, I didn't even check the family group chat. I didn't need to, but it found me anyway. A few weeks after my return, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey Sam, this is Mark, Derek's neighbor. He told me to reach out. There's been an incident." My stomach tightened. I called the number. Mark picked up. "Hey man, sorry to bother you. Derek gave me your number in case of emergencies." "What happened?" He sighed. "Pipe burst in their kitchen, flooded a good chunk of the house. Mold risk. Insurance is taking forever. They're scrambling. Is everyone okay?" "Yeah, everyone's fine. But Derek said they might need a place to stay for a few days, just until cleanup's done. He said you'd probably be okay with it." Of course, he did. I took a deep breath. "Thanks for letting me know, Mark," I said. "But I'm not a backup plan. They'll figure it out." There was a pause. "Understood." I hung up. 2 minutes later, Derek called. I didn't answer. Then Mom called. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "Can we talk? Your sister's pregnant." "Sam, where's your heart? I raised you. This isn't how you repay me." All of it. The same playbook, the same guilt, the same recycled lines. But this time, they bounced right off me because I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't the Sam who crumbled every time someone said family. I was the Sam who'd built something of his own. Stability. Space. Peace. And they hated that I no longer needed them. They hated even more that maybe, just maybe, I was finally happy without them. A week later, I got an email from the family attorney. Subject line, preliminary estate review. Please respond promptly. I opened it, skimmed it, and stopped cold. Apparently, Mom and Dad were restructuring some financial assets, and they wanted to schedule a family meeting to discuss the future. And just like that, I realized what was happening. This wasn't just about crashing at my place. They were trying to reel me back in. Because what came next wasn't just family politics. It was money, property, inheritance. And suddenly, I wasn't just the quiet middle child anymore. I was an obstacle. Or worse, a threat. I didn't respond to the email right away. It sat in my inbox, unread, but burned into my mind like a flickering warning light. Preliminary estate review. Just vague enough to sound harmless. Just official enough to feel important. And that phrase, "please respond promptly," was classic mom speak, even when filtered through legalese. It didn't ask, it demanded. For a few days, I debated ignoring it entirely. But something didn't sit right. They had spent the last several months sabotaging, manipulating, and twisting every interaction to suit themselves. So why suddenly offer transparency? Why ask for a meeting? I knew my parents had assets. Nothing extravagant, but valuable enough. The family house, some retirement funds, a modest piece of land upstate they used to call their escape plan. Growing up, Dad used to talk about leaving it to us when the time was right. But in the same breath, he'd also joke that Leia's the favorite and Derek's the responsible one. So, Sam, you better work hard. At the time, I thought it was a joke. Now, I wasn't so sure. I called the attorney the next morning, a woman named Claire. Professional, polite, efficient. I asked for details. She hesitated, citing client confidentiality. "Your parents asked for this meeting to be informal," she said. "But if you're listed on any assets or accounts, you have a right to review them." That's when I asked the question that changed everything. "Can you tell me if anything has already been transferred?" There was a long pause. Papers rustled on her end of the line. Actually, yes, she said carefully. There have been recent adjustments. The primary residence, their home, is in the process of being placed under joint ownership with Derek. Effective immediately. I blinked. Wait, without a will? It's part of an early living trust transfer, Claire explained. Not unusual, especially when one child is residing in the property long term. Derek didn't live there. Not anymore. But clearly, that didn't matter. I kept my voice steady. What about the other assets? The upstate land? Retirement distributions. She hesitated again. At this time, those are being held under parental control. But I can tell you that there's been discussion of placing Leia as a secondary beneficiary. Not both of us. Just her. Not a word. Not a call. Not even a heads up. They were shuffling everything. The house. The future. The family legacy. Behind my back. I thanked Claire, hung up, and sat in stunned silence. It wasn't even about the money. Not really. It was the confirmation. They were cutting me out, quietly, strategically. And if I hadn't followed up, I might never have known until it was too late. But here's where it gets interesting. See, what my parents didn't know, couldn't have known, was that 2 months earlier, I'd been invited to a private Slack group by one of my freelance clients. A mix of financial consultants, legal aides, and small business owners. Kind of like an invite-only think tank for remote professionals. I joined mostly for networking, but I hadn't participated much. Until now. That same day, I dropped a question in the group. Hypothetically, what are someone's rights if their name was intentionally excluded from a family estate despite prior verbal assurances and shared contributions? Within minutes, replies flooded in. One lawyer, based out of New York, messaged me privately. Turns out she specialized in inheritance disputes and trust litigation. I told her everything. Laid out the family dynamics, the pattern of manipulation, the financial entanglements, the sudden property transfer. I even sent her a redacted version of Claire's email and my own Venmo history, showing years of contributions, monthly utility splits, holiday payments, surprise repairs I'd covered. Let me guess, the lawyer said, they framed it all as voluntary, right? Every single time. She replied with one line, you have more leverage than you think. That sentence lit something inside me, because for the first time I wasn't standing on the outside of the house looking in through the window. I was standing on solid ground, holding receipts and seeing the whole structure for what it was. Rigged, yes, but not untouchable. Over the next 2 weeks, we worked quietly. She helped me draft a formal inquiry, a polite but firm legal letter requesting full documentation of any estate transfers, financial changes, or trust reassignments in which I was a potential stakeholder. It was framed professionally, the kind of letter that could come from someone angry or from someone just watching. It didn't accuse, it warned. I sent it through the attorney. Not to my parents. Not to Derek. Not to Leia. Just to Claire. That alone was enough to rattle the nest. 3 days later, my phone rang. Mom. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Sam, what is this? A lawyer? What are you trying to prove? We are family. Derek texted me next. This is low, man. After everything Mom and Dad have done for you. Then came Leia. You're being dramatic. This is about a house. Grow up. But none of them ever said we didn't do it because they couldn't. They had been caught in the act. Not by confrontation, but by documentation. And I hadn't even played my full hand yet. Because during those same 2 weeks, I'd done something else. I'd reviewed every Venmo payment, every email, every message where they guilt me into chipping in. And I'd created a timeline. A clean, neat list of transactions that painted a very different story, not of a selfish son, but of a pattern of manipulation and unspoken obligation. With that, I set up a second appointment with my lawyer. What do you want to do next? She asked. And for the first time, I had an answer. I don't want to take everything, I said. Just what's mine. And maybe a little piece. She smiled. That can be arranged. Revenge didn't come in the form of a screaming match or a dramatic confrontation in some lawyer's office. No, it was quieter than that. Colder. Controlled. Not an explosion, a slow leak of power. And it started with one simple email reply. Claire, thank you for confirming the asset transfers. I'm formally requesting full documentation regarding the estate and any recent changes made. Kindly send all relevant paperwork to my legal representative, Miss Jessica Tan. Regards, Sam. The second that email went out, the game shifted, because now they knew two things. I wasn't playing along anymore, and I wasn't alone. A lawyer with a clean paper trail, a detailed timeline, and receipts was now in the loop. And they had no idea what Jessica knew or how far she'd go. But the truth? We hadn't even filed anything yet. No lawsuits, no public records. Just pressure. That subtle, legal kind of pressure that makes people sweat. Not because you've attacked, but because you've prepared to. Within 24 hours, I got a call from Claire. Your parents are alarmed, she said carefully. I almost smiled. They should be. They'd like to schedule a family meeting to resolve this. I paused. In person? Yes. I agreed, but with conditions. My lawyer would attend as a silent observer. We'd meet on neutral ground. Everything discussed would be documented. And most importantly, if they raised their voices, made accusations, or tried to guilt me, the meeting would end immediately. Claire relayed my terms. I expected them to back down. They didn't. I arrived at the conference room on the top floor of a quiet legal office downtown. Jessica was already there, calm and unreadable, a neat leather folder open in front of her. My parents were the last to arrive. Mom in pearls and forced grace. Dad with his arms folded like he was already disappointed in me. Derek came too. Leia did not. Interesting. We didn't shake hands, didn't hug, just sat. Claire opened. Thank you all for coming. Let's keep this professional. Mom spoke first. Of course, we were trying to make responsible decisions, she said. Derek's been carrying a lot of the burden. We thought giving him partial ownership would make sense. I didn't speak. She continued. You've always been more independent, Sam. You don't need the house. Still, I said nothing. Jessica just tapped her pen lightly. Dad jumped in. You're blowing this out of proportion. We were going to explain everything. You were? Jessica asked smoothly. Before or after the paperwork finalized? Silence. Derek sighed. Look, man. This isn't about cutting you out. We just thought it made sense to keep things in the family. You live alone. No kids. We thought. There's that word again. I interrupted quietly. Thought. No one asked me. Claire tried to steer things back. Sam's requested full documentation. I believe that's a fair starting point. Jessica slid a document across the table. This is a formal request under a state review protocol. Once received, it will determine if any financial contributions made by Sam were under mutual agreement or if restitution is appropriate. Restitution. Mom nearly laughed. You want to see your own family? Jessica didn't blink. I didn't say that, but if my client's financial contributions were used to maintain property now being transferred without his consent, that raises legal questions. Dad looked at me for the first time. Really looked. You go that far? I met his eyes. I didn't come here to fight. I came here to get what I've earned. Nothing more. The silence that followed was deafening. In the end, I didn't need to file. I didn't need to go scorched earth. The thread alone, clean, precise, and backed with proof, was enough to unravel the whole plan. A week later, Claire sent an updated file. The transfer to Derek had been reversed. The land upstate was now frozen under a new legal trust with all children listed equally. Any future adjustments would require unanimous consent. Jessica reviewed it, nodded, and said, "Smart move. Now they can't make a single decision without your signature." I thought that would be the end of it, but then came the part one didn't expect. Derek called me. Not to yell, not to guilt me, but to offer money. "Look," he said, "things are tight with the house stuff falling through and the baby. Would you consider selling your share of the land just to keep the peace?" That's when it clicked. They weren't just upset because I stood up for myself. They were afraid because I wasn't just some quiet middle child anymore. I was a stakeholder. A gatekeeper. A name they couldn't erase from the paperwork or the decisions. And that, to them, was worse than losing money. It was losing control. So I told Derek I'd think about it, and I did, for about 5 seconds. Then I politely declined and said, "Family should share things, remember?" He hung up. I haven't heard from him since. After I declined Derek's offer, things went quiet again. But this time, it was a different kind of silence. Not the cold shoulder. Not the temporary retreat before the next attack. This silence was heavy final. The kind that settles after a door has been closed, locked, and quietly walked away from. I didn't attend the next few family events. The baby was born, I found out, through a distant cousin's Instagram story. A grainy photo of Leia in a hospital bed, cradling her newborn. Derek was in the corner, smiling stiffly. No mention of me. No group chat announcement. No invitation. Not even a guilt trip text. They'd officially stopped trying to pretend I was still one of them. And honestly, I didn't feel sad. I felt free. The estate, thanks to Jessica's airtight adjustments, remained locked down. Every decision about the house, the land, the accounts, all required my consent. And I gave none. Not out of spite, but because I didn't trust them. They'd shown me what they were willing to do in secret. If I hadn't stepped in when I did, I would have been cut out completely. Now they were stuck. 3 voices were required for any movement, and one of them belonged to me. Jessica called it quiet leverage. I called it justice. Over the next few months, Mom tried one last strategy, the peace offering. She emailed me a letter, long, rambling, and performative, about how families have ups and downs, how she never meant to make me feel excluded, how things had just been so stressful lately. She ended it with a line that would have gutted me 5 years ago. "We just miss our son." But I'd come too far to fall for it now. There was no apology for the sabotage. No admission of the manipulation. No acknowledgement of the years of dismissal, of being used, of being erased. She missed the version of me who said yes to everything. Not the version who'd finally stood up. I replied with 2 sentences. "I'm glad you're reflecting, but this version of your son doesn't go backwards." No reply. That was nearly a year ago. Since then, I've built something better. I moved, not out of fear, but out of freedom, to a better apartment, a better city. I still work remote, still stack freelance gigs, but now I do it on my terms. I travel more, sleep better, laugh more. And the best part? I live without looking over my shoulder. I've stopped checking the family group chat, not because I'm afraid of what I'll see, but because it doesn't matter anymore. They still whisper about me at family functions, I'm sure. Still twist the story, still tell themselves I was the one who changed. They're right. I did change. I stopped bleeding for people who only noticed when I stopped bleeding. And the last time I visited the family land, just to walk it, to remember, I stood under the old oak tree at the edge of the property. The sun was setting, the wind was quiet, and I said out loud, to no one, "I don't owe you anymore." Then I turned around and walked away. What would you have done if your family tried to erase you like this? Have you ever had to choose between your peace and your family's expectations? Tell me what you think in the comments. I really want to know.